Welcome to the debate. Rui Costa has just confirmed the rumors that have basically been echoing through the Estadio de Luz for weeks now.
Yeah, it's finally official.
Right. José Mourinho is staying on as Benfica's manager for another season. He's officially rejected the Portuguese national team job following Roberto Martinez's departure. And, well, today I'll be arguing that this decision is, quite frankly, a fatal betrayal of Benfica's foundational attacking DNA.
Wow, fatal betrayal.
I mean it. It completely abandons our youth model, and it jeopardizes the club's long-term viability. While my colleague here contends that fully embracing Mourinho's pragmatic, result-oriented structure is the harsh medicine this chaotic institution desperately needs to survive.
That is exactly the dividing line. I mean, for years, Benfica has romanticized this so-called offensive DNA to the point of absolute self-destruction.
Self-destruction?
Yes, self-destruction. Look at the administrative chaos. The club has been, tearing up the floorboards every 6 months, burning through managers like Roger Schmidt and Bruno Lage. Fully committing to Mourinho is no longer just a tactical option. It is the only viable way left to build a stable, winning project out of the wreckage.
Well, the wreckage you're referring to is real, I'll give you that, but the medicine is going to kill the patient. Benfica's soul is rooted in dominant attacking football. It is the historical ADN ofensivo.
Right, the famous DNA.
Exactly. The expectation baked into the very concrete of the stadium is that if you are up 2-0, you hunt for the third. If you are up 3-0, you hunt for the fourth. And Mourinho's philosophy is the complete antithesis of this.
But
He lowers the lines, he concedes possession, and he is perfectly content to sit on a 1-0 lead, playing expectantly to punish opponent errors. This isn't just a stylistic preference. It creates a profound cultural mismatch.
I think you're overstating the cultural aspect.
Am I? The most damning part is that we are selling our soul, and we aren't even getting the promised results. I mean, we have already watched early eliminations from the Champions League, the Taça de Portugal, and the Taça da Liga under his watch.
Okay, but evaluating Mourinho based on the wreckage he inherited paints a highly distorted picture.
It's his record.
It's his record with someone else's broken toys. Holding on to this idealized aesthetic standard completely ignores the grim reality of the squad he was handed. You were talking about a roster assembled at massive expense for completely different tactical philosophies.
Sure, it was built for Schmidt.
Right, and it was deeply underperforming long before Mourinho walked through the door. What Mourinho brings is an elite shield.
A shield?
Yes. His communication skills, his ability to absorb pressure and protect the institution, even when it means calling out the dressing room, is a necessary stabilizing force. True long-term viability means accepting that a gritty 1-0 victory is fundamentally superior to losing attractively. He needs a tailored squad, not the ghost of football past.
But that boardroom shield you are praising becomes a weapon against the team when applied to the actual grass.
How so?
Let's look at the on-pitch reality. Specifically, that disastrous first half against FC Porto. You say he needs a tailored squad, but what he is doing right now is actively destructive.
Destructive is a strong word.
It's accurate. Playing a Mourinho low block with a squad built for high-pressing, possession-based football is like trying to run a sprint race in deep-sea diving gear. The weight of the defensive demands completely suffocates their natural explosive movement.
They just lack discipline in that match.
No, it's systemic. Where Mourinho asks a high-line defender like Antonio Silva to suddenly drop into a low block, he's neutralizing Silva's greatest asset, which is his recovery pace. He's forcing him to defend statically in crowded penalty boxes.
Well,
That mechanism leads directly to the fractures we saw against Porto. If the current squad simply cannot execute his vision, why are we doubling down on a manager who refuses to adapt to his players?
because the failure against Porto wasn't a failure of Mourinho's tactical framework. It was a symptom of the Frankenstein's monster of a squad he is trying to manage.
Frankenstein's monster, they won the league a year ago.
And they've regressed massively since. The wingers didn't know how to tuck in and form a flat bank of four, not because the tactic is flawed, but because they have spent 2 years being told to cheat high up the pitch.
Right, to press.
Exactly. If you want proof of concept of what his system looks like when the players actually execute the defensive spacing, look at the performance against Real Madrid.
I mean, we still didn't achieve our overarching tournament goals in that campaign.
We didn't advance, true. But tactically, That specific match was a masterclass in limitation.
Masterclass is generous.
It really was. Against a vastly superior opponent, the distances between Mourinho's midfield pivot and the center backs were exactly 8 yards. He demonstrated exactly how a compressed, disciplined block can neutralize elite threats.
But they couldn't sustain it.
Because they don't have the conditioning yet. When the players buy in, the floor of the team is incredibly high. You simply cannot definitively say his tactics clash with Benfica until he has a full preseason to drill those automatisms.
A full preseason.
Yes, whether he deploys a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-5-2, he needs the summer training camp to teach this squad how to absorb pressure without splintering. Right now, he is forced to manage game by game without the baseline conditioning his system requires.
Okay, but conditioning isn't just physical, though. It's psychological. And that brings us directly to the Youth Academy, which is, quite frankly, the financial and spiritual engine of this club.
I knew we'd get the seashell eventually.
Of course, we have to. Let's look closely at how a shift toward immediate, zero-risk football impacts these young assets. Thiago Gouvea's recent insights absolutely laid bare the psychology of what he called the 5-minute cameo under strict tactical regimes.
Young players always face pressure when transitioning to the senior squad. That isn't exclusive to one manager.
It's the type of pressure, though. Gouveia explained the mechanics of fear in this specific system. When young players are thrown into these rigid, high-stakes, low-block setups for the last 10 minutes of a match, they are paralyzed.
They have to learn to manage the game.
But they know that in a Mourinho system, a single lost possession that leads to a counterattack will put them on the bench for a month. So what happens? Their first instinct is to play a safe, backward pass. They completely suppress their flair.
Which is sometimes necessary.
But the macroeconomics of Benfica rely entirely on the naivety of youth. The bravery of a 19-year-old to attempt a 40-yard line-breaking pass or take on 2 defenders. That is exactly what international scouts pay 60 million euros for.
You can't just play academy kids so they can show off for scouts.
Mourinho's system breeds fear, and fear depreciates player value. We saw Ivan Lima and Thiago Freitas get a brief appearance, make a minor positional error, and just vanish from the first team. Contrast that with Andreas Schelderup.
Schilderup is an exceptional talent, but he also came into the team under totally different circumstances.
He came in and was allowed to fail. Gouveia pointed out that Schelderup thrived specifically because he was given the continuity to play through his mistakes.
Right.
He could make 3 errors in a match, know his place was secure, and eventually produce the game-winning moment. If Benfica financially depends on developing and selling brave, creative talent, how is a mistake-punishing environment sustainable?
I understand the economic argument you're making, but it relies on a completely flawed assumption about what actually develops a young player.
How is it flawed?
You are assuming that a chaotic, high-turnover offensive team that drops points every weekend is a healthy incubator for youth. It isn't. Integrating youth effectively is a luxury of a stable, winning team.
I disagree with that entirely.
Think about it. When the senior team is bleeding confidence and the manager is on the verge of being sacked every Tuesday, the academy players stepping into that dressing room absorb that massive anxiety.
So the solution is to implement a system where they never see the pitch at all?
No, the solution is to establish a baseline of winning first. I acknowledge his historical record with youth is sparse. But look at players like Scott McTominay.
McTominay? Really?
Yes, hear me out. He became a foundational piece at Manchester United specifically because he embraced Mourinho's structural discipline. Young players will ultimately build stronger, more resilient professional careers within a rigid system that wins games 1-0, than being thrown into a defensively naive squad and asked to be the savior of a collapsing offensive philosophy.
Okay, I have to stop you there. You can't point to McTominay as a success story when evaluating Benfica's ecosystem.
Why not? He developed into a top-level pro.
Because Benfica's entire financial model relies on selling 3 João Neves or Enzo Fernandez-type players a decade. A defensive midfielder or physical destroyer surviving a Mourinho system does not fund the Sexal Academy.
It brings balance to the squad, though.
But how does Mourinho's low-block system, which inherently restricts attacking freedom, create the next 70 million euro attacking winger? It doesn't.
It creates value in a different, arguably more sustainable way for the modern market. You're stuck in this idea that international scouts only pay for stepovers and flair. They don't.
They pay for attacking output.
Top Premier League clubs pay 70 million euros for wingers who understand tactical discipline, who know how to track back, who can execute within a structured defensive phase while transitioning rapidly.
That's a very specific profile.
Value isn't generated in a vacuum. It is generated on the biggest stages. A winger who proves he can execute Mourinho's tactical demands in a Champions League quarterfinal is vastly more valuable than a pure flair player who puts up numbers in a 3-2 shootout loss to Rio Ave, but is a massive liability out of possession.
Right, but
Mourinho provides the structural safety net that allows the team to reach those high-leverage matches where player value truly spikes.
But reaching those high-leverage matches under Mourinho requires a massive, immediate financial gamble on the transfer market. And I really want to formally cross-examine this idea of squad building under him.
Go ahead.
We are already buried in accounts. We have a roster bloated with expensive players like Orkun Kokcu or Arthur Cabral, whose book values are depreciating because they do not fit this rigid system. To make Mourinho's system work, you are arguing we need to give him a bespoke transfer window?
I'm arguing we need to stop forcing him to cook with ingredients that actively clash with his recipe.
But buying his specific ingredients is essentially handing the keys to the treasury to a caretaker manager?
He's not a caretaker.
Look at the mechanics of his contract. When you sign Mourinho to a long-term deal with massive indemnification clauses, you aren't just paying his salary, you are financially blockading the club.
That's a dramatic way to phrase it.
It's the reality. If the scouting department goes out and buys physical, low-block, system-specific players to fit his 4-2-3-1, and he leaves in 18 months, which, by the way, is exactly how his recent tenures have ended, what happens?
He's building a foundation.
He's leaving us with a highly specific, aging, defensively oriented squad. The next manager, who will undoubtedly be brought in to restore our attacking DNA, will look at that roster and say, I can't use any of these players. We will be right back at square one, forced into another massive reformulation, but significantly poorer.
I completely reject the premise that he is a caretaker, and your reading of the financial blockade actually works in reverse.
How so?
Those massive indemnification clauses mean he is virtually unfireable in the short term. He is the long-term project. True financial responsibility right now means stopping the panicked cycle of buying shiny 20 million euro attacking toys for managers who get sacked a month into the season.
The players aren't the problem. The constant managerial shifts are.
The approach you are warning against, the constant reformulation, is exactly what the pursuit of this offensive DNA has caused over the last few years.
But his preferred profile of player is notoriously established, experienced, and expensive. How do you align the scouting department with his vision without completely bankrupting the club?
By executing a precise, low-budget market. The scouting department has to sit down with him, define the exact positional needs, and find undervalued, high work rate players.
That's easier said than done.
You do not need to spend 30 million euros per position to build a Mourinho team. You need 5 million euro tactical soldiers who possess the intelligence to hold a line and the discipline to execute transitions.
5 million euro soldiers.
Exactly. Look at the Italian market. Look at the French second division. It is far more dangerous to give him a mismatched squad of expensive flair players and expect offensive miracles than to execute a targeted, budget-conscious window tailored to his defensive needs.
But
if you align the scouting strictly to his parameters, you actually lower the overall spend because you stop paying the flair premium that Benfica has been addicted to.
The flair premium is what the fans pay to see. You cannot separate the financial health of the club from the emotional health of the stadium.
The fans pay to win.
If you execute this low-budget tactical soldier transfer window, you are changing the very nature of the institution. We are a club that prides itself on dominating the ball and entertaining the paying public.
Entertainment doesn't win titles on its own.
You are asking the fans to endure an entire season, perhaps longer, of watching their team sit behind the ball at home, waiting for an opponent's mistake. When he loses games playing defensive football, the backlash is exponential.
Right.
When you lose trying to win beautifully, the fans can at least applaud the intent. But when you lose while playing not to lose, the stadium turns toxic immediately. You will alienate the socio base, which directly impacts matchday revenue, merchandise, and the overall economic velocity of the club.
I'm sorry, but aesthetic pride is a consolation prize for losers. The stadium turns toxic when you don't win trophies, period.
So style doesn't matter at all?
Look at the reality of European football today. The margins are razor thin. If Benfica wants to be genuinely competitive, to stop being a stepping stone club that gets physically bullied in Europe and outmaneuvered domestically, it needs the hardened, cynical edge that Mourinho provides.
That cynical edge.
Yes, the football might not be champagne. It might be grit, suffering, and defensive shape. But when that grit translates into lifting a league title or making a deep European run, the complaints about DNA fade into the background. The fans ultimately want to win. Mourinho, with a squad built strictly to his specifications, knows how to engineer winning.
Well, I think we have fundamentally different views on the mechanics of what sustains this club's lifeblood over decades. My position remains that Benfica's foundational offensive identity and its specific economic model of integrating brave, risk-taking youth are simply too critical to sacrifice.
I understand that fear.
Handing the entire structural philosophy of the club over to Mourinho's brand of rigid pragmatism, especially when early results have been poor and the financial risk of tailoring a squad to him is so incredibly high, is a massive gamble. We risk losing not just matches, but the soul and the primary revenue engine of the institution.
In my position is that the club's current trajectory is completely unsustainable. We have to stop romanticizing a style of play that has led directly to administrative chaos and a bloated, depreciating squad. By backing Mourinho fully, absorbing the aesthetic complaints, and giving him a tailored, budget-conscious squad that fits his specific tactical needs, Benfica can finally establish a stable floor. From that stability, a winning project can actually take root.
I will say, despite our deep divide on the philosophy, there is one crucial reality where our analyses do converge.
The hybrid nightmare we are watching right now.
Exactly. The current half measure. I mean, Mourinho trying to execute a low-block, transition-based system with a squad built for the high-pressing automatisms of Roger Schmidt is fundamentally unworkable.
Totally agree.
Neither the romantics nor the pragmatists are getting what they want. The tactical mechanics are clashing with the personal on the pitch, and the results reflect that friction. The true test isn't what happened in the chaotic months following his mid-season arrival. The ultimate test is this upcoming preseason.
We are entirely aligned on that front. He needs the summer. He needs the weeks on the training ground to drill the defensive spacing. And he needs a transfer window that trims the depreciating assets and brings in players who intuitively understand how to suffer without fracturing.
Right.
Only then, with his actual system in place, can we truly evaluate if his methodology can succeed at the modern Benfica.
Which brings us back to the core of the issue, the tension between a football club's historical soul and the cold, unyielding mechanics of modern pragmatism. It is a debate that goes far beyond just Benfica or José Mourinho. It offers profound insights into how any sporting institution builds its economic and cultural future.
Absolutely.
Do you preserve the foundational philosophy of attacking flair, even if it leaves you exposed and unstable? Or do you lock down the tactical structure, knowing you might suffocate the very creativity that funds your academy and fills your stadium?
That's the big question.
The true answer won't be found in press conferences or in the boardroom. It will reveal itself in the transfer market over the coming months, in the tactical drills at Segswell, and ultimately on the pitch. We'll leave it to you to form your own conclusion. Thank you for joining us on the debate.